I'm going to do something a little bit different starting out. I'm going to ask for 3 volunteers. Now, don't be freaked out. The thing's on the board, so there's no wrong answers here. But if I could have 3 volunteers, no, yes, maybe, Onita, very good. 2 more. No, you can stay right there, Anita. I'm just going to ask you a question. Molly. And, okay, well, you guys can come on up. 3rd, come on down. The price is right. Do I have a 3rd?
Come on.
A rose between 2 thorns or a thorn between 2?
Rhonda, come on.
No, Carol? Okay, 2. When you, the terrific 2.
Yeah.
When you see that or you hear a still small voice, what comes to your mind?
God.
God?
A child.
Interesting. All right. Well, we'll see if what the Lord's given me to share and what you've shared correspond. But I love
Doesn't.
God. Thank you.
That's it?
That's it. That's all I wanted. But let's give him a hand. Yeah. All right. Well, the Lord impressed a still small voice. There's a story of a shepherd searching for sheep who comes upon a peculiar flower. When he picks the flower, in front of him emerges a cave full of gold, rubies, and diamonds. Well, placing the flower on a nearby stone, he scoops up as much of the riches as he can possibly carry. He is ready to exit the cave when he hears a voice. Don't forget the best. What could possibly be better than all the riches I've got in my arms? So he leaves the cave. He reasons and he leaves the cave. Once outside, the cave disappears and the precious gems become dust. The peculiar flower, which made it all real, was left behind, and the voice of warning went unheeded. God is not dead, but for many, he is as unheeded as that voice. We all get swept away with the busyness of life, the daily rat race, and greatly ignore the gentle voice of God's leading and guiding. The first time I remember a gentle nudging from the Lord was at 7 years of age. We were attending a church in Bay City, the one I told you that I learned that song. There was a fellowship time between the morning services. And there was this one friendly man. I mean, if anybody knows Gary House, you've seen this man. All right? He was the friendliest, and he had the snow white hair. It was just, everybody loved Lenny Reinhardt. Well, like I said, I was 7 years old. I got an urging to go say hi to Lenny. And it was a crowded room. I happened to be on one side of the room, and Lenny was on the far side. There were so many people. And I was young, and he was old. That's my reasoning. So I reasoned, I'll do it next week. Well, next week never came, because Lenny died a couple days later. So sometimes you don't get a second try. Ever since then, I've been really trying to be sensitive to nudging the leadings that I get. But it's natural for us to look at the external. I looked at all the crowd. I looked at, I was so young, what would he wouldn't have time to say hi to me. And I forget that God's in charge. Next one. This is Elijah. In 1 Kings, we have a story that puts this dilemma in perspective. The prophet Elijah has just run away from Jezebel, a queen who has vowed to kill him, when God finds him on a mountain. God confronts him. Elijah, what are you doing here? Elijah gives a sob story about how Jezebel is trying to kill him and that he alone is God's prophet. But God instructs Elijah to stand at the mouth of a cave. He has something to show him. First came a strong wind, breaking rocks in pieces. But the Lord was not in the wind. Next came an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. Then came a fire in all its fury, but the Lord was not in the fire. But after the fire, a still small voice, and the Lord was there. God's power was displayed through the forces, but his presence is in a still small voice. Don't forget the best. To hear his voice, we have to be listening. And since most of the time it's a still small voice, we need to be still and know that he is God. Next. How many recall the cartoons where a character has a moral dilemma? And on his one shoulder pops a mini version in with white robes and wings. And on the other side, a red-suited one with horns. They then argue with each other over what's the right thing to do. Some call that moral wrestling your conscience. I submit to you that it is God helping you make the right decision. It's up to you who you listen to. Listen to this guy or this guy. I grew up on cartoons, so I saw variations of that. All right. It's been said that there's a void in each one of us that can only be filled by God. As we listen and heed more, he indwells more. Jesus, now, I don't have a picture for this, but I want you to picture this in your mind. Jesus was teaching a crowd when Pharisees burst through with a woman who they threw down in front of him. We caught her in the very act of adultery. The law says she is to be stoned. What do you say we do? I'm going to take a slight bunny path here. First of all, adultery is not a good thing. But to my understanding, adultery is a private thing. It's not done in front of everybody. So these Pharisees said that they had caught her in the very act. So where were they? Shame on them. And second of all, adultery is also, it takes two to tango. Where's the other one? You just brought the woman. Okay, getting back to the main point here. They no doubt had stones ready. They had already made up their minds. Jesus appears to be writing in the sand, in no hurry to answer. When the Pharisees pressed, Jesus looked at him and said, "He who is without sin, cast the first stone." Now, conviction, conscience, the sense of right and wrong, or may I say, the still small voice, spoke to these ready to condemn. And the reason I took that little bunny path was I wanted to show you that these guys were kind of depraved to begin with, but the conscience, the still small voice, spoke to each one of them because they dropped the stone and walked away. And notice that they didn't do it all together, and it was like a 1 to 1 to 1 to 1. That's the impression you get from the Bible account. So you're speaking to him, and him, and him, and him, and not in mass. Okay. Next. This is Jesus ascending. But before Jesus ascended, he shared with his disciples, I am going away, but after I go, I will send a comforter, a Holy Spirit that will guide and direct you and teach you. There is a void in each of us that only God can fill. As we open more to him, that void becomes smaller. But it's an individual choice. We can't make anyone do anything. We can only do what we feel God would have us do and be an example to others. Okay, now I'm coming back. Jesus, we miss Jesus, the physical Jesus, most of us by almost 2,000 years. There were a few of these gentlemen right here actually were able to see the God-man, Jesus, and fellowship with him. We didn't have that luxury. So, boy, it hurts to be us. I'm paraphrasing Joe's a little bit. It hurts to be us. And so how can we be one with Jesus? Through his Holy Spirit. And that's what the still small voice is. We have that ability, even though we were born centuries later, we can come near him. We can draw nigh to him. Jesus says, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in. God will not force his way in, yet God desires us to desire him. When I was a very young boy, my parents divorced. Now, I don't say that for me. I mean, that's a lot of people have that story. But my mother, I had such a close relationship with her. I loved her so much that I would never have to worry, she would never have to worry about me giving her a hug. It was just given, okay? Well, my father, he at times would want me to hug him, but we didn't have much going. So, and he was the kind, early on especially, he would sit in a recliner, and there was a perimeter that his arm could reach. And he said to me, I remember several times, he would say to me, I want a hug, and he was kind of in a drunken stupor, so that added to the story. But anyway, I was a little kid, and I would stay right outside that perimeter. You had a perimeter here, right? So I was getting pretty cocky, and so there was one time, usually if it was past that perimeter, he would not get up off that chair. Well, one time I got a little bit too close. I got in the perimeter. He snagged me, gave me a hug. Oh, man, I thought I was going to die. It was such a hug. But there's two ways. I guess why I say that is for this. God could have forced us to love him, like Dad forced me to give him a hug. Or the other way, where I just gladly gave my mom a hug. And that's what God desires. He desires us to desire him, but he's not going to force us. Where's the love in that? So, that's where the still small voice comes in. A lot of people say God is dead. They don't know. They don't know. They don't have that still small voice. Or else they wouldn't say that. That's all I have for this time. But thank you all for listening, and I pray that this was a blessing to you. It really was a blessing for me to write down the words of God and be able to share this with you.